Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, November 2nd. And what kind of show do we have for you today? We have a great show for you today. Today, I will be airing an interview recorded just a couple of days ago with Select Board member Paul Warren, and he's going to walk through the MBTA Communities Act warrant articles, specifically what is known as the M Zone proposal and Harvard Street proposals and how they work together. It really is a great interview. We learn a little bit of the details behind the compromises and the negotiations that were necessary to get this warrant article to the place it is today. It will need a 2/3 vote at town meeting. I believe it will get there, but of course, until the votes are counted, they're like chickens. Don't be doing that. So we're going to bring you that in a few minutes. But first, of course, we have the news. United States President Joe Biden worked with leaders in Egypt and Israel to allow for safe passage at the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. Foreign passport holders and some of the most seriously wounded will be allowed to leave Gaza and are currently being processed at the crossing for entrance to Egypt. The United States House of Representatives has elected a new speaker, Republican Mike Johnson of Louisiana. The federal government is working on setting a comprehensive guideline on artificial intelligence technology. These guidelines would allow multiple agencies to start regulating emerging technologies and protect individuals' privacy in the absence of legislation. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey updated the guidelines the state will use when considering pardons and commutations. The state can now use the act for correcting legal errors, righting systematic wrongs, addressing historical injustices, exercising compassion, showing mercy, promoting equity, and fighting racism. The federal government will co-host a clinic at the state to help migrant families and shelters obtain work authorizations. State leaders hope this will help those in state shelters get jobs and be able to move out of the shelters, opening space for new arrivals. The Massachusetts climate chief released her report containing recommendations on how the state can improve its climate programs. One of those recommendations includes updates to Mass Save, which remove utility companies from leading the program and instead structure it like sister programs with an independent program administrator. Brookline's tobacco-free generation law is facing a legal challenge in front of the Supreme Judicial Court, with hearings beginning Monday, November 6. The bylaw in question, which passed in the November 2020 town meeting and went into effect in September 2021, prohibits the sale of tobacco products to anyone born after January 1st, 2000. The new Driscoll School on Washington Street officially opened on Monday. The old Driscoll School will be torn down and replaced with playing fields. The state is also sending more money to Brookline for the construction of the new Pierce School. With an assist from the legislature, the Massachusetts School Building Authority is increasing the caps on construction reimbursements, allowing an additional $7 million toward a new Pierce School. On Sunday, November 5th, from 2:30 to 4:30 at the Coolidge Corner Library, the public is welcome to join in the second Brookline community gathering to support people in both Israel and the Gaza Strip. All are welcome, all faiths, all ages, to come together and make a difference. That's the news of the week. Folks, stay tuned. After the flip, we're going to get into it with Paul Warren, Select Board member, discussing the M zones, but really the proposal for Harvard Street and how the new zoning and new planning would influence and impact our community's primary commercial corridor. So stay tuned, and we'll see you on the flip side. And welcome back to TV on TV. As I said, we have an outstanding guest today. We have Select Board member Paul Warren, and we're going to focus our conversation on some zoning proposals coming up before town meeting. Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tommy.
Paul, you're one of 5 Select Board members, but you've really shown some leadership around this issue. Why don't you give us just a little bit of a flavor for your role in the process of these zoning articles coming up.
For sure. Thanks, Tommy. I realized that we were going to have a bit of a struggle with bringing some clarity and options to town meeting based on the path that we were traveling on. So I worked with my colleagues and the town administrator and the planning department, as well as some advocacy groups, to help bring some clarity to the article that the select board wanted to bring forward. And as a result, I think we're going to have a very clear set of choices for town meetings so that we can be compliant with the MBTA Communities Act.
And let's get into that. The MBTA Communities Act was part of an economic development law passed by House and Senate and signed by Governor Baker. Can you give us just a couple of sentences? And I'm going to be clear, folks should not read farther into the MBTA Communities Act than what Paul says. What does the MBTA Communities Act actually seek to accomplish?
Right. So what it does is it asks communities that are serviced by the MBTA or adjacent to a community that's serviced by the MBTA, and it asks those communities to adjust its zoning to allow for by right development of housing near transit. It doesn't require anybody to create housing. It doesn't actually produce any housing by law. It just creates the opportunity for by right development for additional housing.
So there's 125 communities, but they come in sequences, and Brookline essentially goes first because we have subway access. Right. And the housing that's must be allowed is multifamily. In fact, it's about 15 units per acre, which is the sort of the way to think about it as 3-deckers come out to be about 15 units per acre. It doesn't have to be 3-deckers. What's Brookline's approach to compliance?
So Tommy, the select board over the summer ended up developing an article called the consensus plan. And the consensus plan for the select board is an approach that is intended to change zoning near transit as required by the law, but that will produce housing in such a way that it will help us create more additional affordable housing, as well as market rate housing and mixed income housing, frankly. We anticipate that our proposal will protect and expand our commercial tax base, specifically around the Harvard Street corridor. And importantly, there's several innovations that we're putting forward that we think it will be instrumental in helping to inform the upcoming comprehensive plan that the town is about to undertake starting early next year.
So that's a lot of pieces. Let's sort of help folks understand in terms of neighborhoods or in terms of housing stock, what's on the table for Brookline, and maybe even Paul, what is your preferred direction that the town go, given that it may have a couple of choices at town meeting?
Sure. So the select board does have this a proposal called the consensus plan. It's Article 1 of Special Town Meeting 4. I actually think, Tommy, you might even have a map that might help me explain what it is. A picture's worth 1,000 words.
I do. I'll try to bring it up. You keep talking.
Yeah, I'm going to keep talking. So I didn't mean to surprise you like that. But yeah, so the select board's proposal combines two specific proposals. One is a proposal called the M District Plus. And this is an area on this map here that is all shaded in yellow. And the M District Plus area is essentially existing multifamily housing that meets the letter of the law, frankly, for the amount of density that we need to have. And so the yellow shaded area is already built out. So we're compliant by submitting those yellow areas. But
Paul, I'm just going to walk through the best I can where those yellow areas are for folks who are having trouble with the map. I'm going to go west to east. So southwest of Washington Square, kind of Dean's Road, Beaconsfield, that part of Aspinwall Hill. And then we see a chunk of Beacon Street, roughly between Washington Square and Summit Ave, both north and south. Center Street has a significant portion. South of Beacon Street, Park and the area sort of, around Stop and Shop, not on Harvard, but east and west of it. And then a significant portion of the area around St. Paul Street, both sides of the street, from south of Beacon near the Lawrence School, north all the way nearly to Com. And I'm being general, of course, individual parcels make this very complicated. And
Right.
finally, there is one very small section that is north of Harvard Street near the Boston line, kind of a little bit west and a little bit north of FRR.
That's right.
And I just want to sort of give people a feel that this is a significant portion of North Brookline in a variety of different neighborhoods.
That's correct. So anything that's not a red crosshatch, right, is this multifamily area. But it's really important, Tommy, to understand that the reason why these areas were chosen was because they're already built out. They meet the letter of the law for us having to identify areas that would produce the number of housing that have the availability of potential housing units based on what the MBTA Communities Act is requiring of us. However, because these yellow shaded areas are already built out, we expect very little housing to come from it. There's many parcels here, as you can imagine, and we're estimating there might be 100 housing units that would be produced by changing the zoning in these yellow areas. And frankly, the committee, we had a committee that looked at this. That was by design. We wanted to find an area because, North Brookline is dense, that is already, meeting the requirement of the law. So the letter of the law. It doesn't meet the spirit of the law, frankly, because it actually doesn't end up producing any housing, but it does meet the letter of the law. So that's the first component of the consensus article. And the reason why that's an important component is it allows us to decouple Harvard Street from the MBTA Communities Act. So originally when this whole plan was going forward, Harvard Street was going to be our only proposal. And there was a lot of concern about that. There was a lot of restrictions based on having to comply with the MBTA Communities Act, ground floor commercial, how much affordable housing you could require, the amount of acreage. And so by coupling these yellow shaded areas, the M districts, the multifamily districts that are already built out, won't produce any housing, with Harvard Street, we are able to actually do some significant things on Harvard Street to get us the type of outcomes that we want in Brookline versus what the MBTA Communities Act was kind of drawing hard lines around what we could do. So the second piece on this map is the Harvard Street piece, and that's that vertical crosshatched area. And it would be helpful maybe to dig into that. Yeah, thank you, Tommy. So the Harvard Street piece really is the area that's going to provide us with meeting the objectives, the overall objectives of the select board, which we need to protect and expand our commercial tax base and also create additional housing. So you can see on this map, there's the corridor of Harvard Street. Those yellow parcels are parcels that actually were negotiated as part of a negotiation with two primary advocacy groups, Brookline by Design and Yes in Brookline, which generated this grand compromise that everybody's talking about. That's bringing a lot of support for this. But this map shows you all the parcels along Harvard Street that are, in fact, included in the consensus plan.
Now, just for folks who are having trouble, we're looking at the spaghetti string of Harvard Street from north all the way up near TJ Maxx, south all the way to Route 9. And we can see there's parcels of a variety of different colors. There's yellow, a purple, kind of a gray, I'll call it red, and a blue. And Paul just explained the yellow ones are no longer part of the active proposal that it seems like town meeting is going to bite off first and foremost, and frankly, seems like it's got the votes, although you never know until you know.
You never know.
Paul, can you walk us through the innovations that that this proposal brings to land use and planning? What should we be thinking about as what's novel and what's sort of a new direction for our town that we're rolling out on Harvard Street?
It's a great question, Tommy. So the first thing, maybe just a little bit of orientation around the colors on these maps. The colors actually identify various subzones within the Harvard Street corridor. And those are important, and I don't have pictures of them at this time, but those are important because those do map to one of the major innovations that we have for the Harvard Street plan or the consensus plan, and that is form-based zoning. Each one of these colors ties back to a form that has a district that has a specific outcome, like a more heavily trafficked commercial area, a transitional area that might be more, quieter, where it might be 100% residential, and then areas that are smaller than that. And form-based zoning is an innovation that other communities have used very effectively for creating opportunities for by right development. The challenge with our development today is that if you want to do anything on Harvard Street today, which is very difficult because of our zoning, you'd have to go before committees like the planning board, and the developer knows what they want. But depending on who's sitting around the table at the planning board and these other committees, you may get a different outcome each time. It's very inconsistent. And what form-based zoning does is it's an expression of what the town, what the community expects from development on Harvard Street. For example, it tells you how tall the buildings are, which is 4 stories. It tells you the height of the commercial. It gives you setbacks. It tells you the type of materials you can use, window placement, cornices. There's a lot of specifics. And actually, that's very helpful for developers because now it's not a guessing game. And it's not this long, drawn-out negotiation between the developer, the town, and the neighborhood, which adds tremendous cost to development, which raises the cost of housing and the leasing of our commercial spaces. So form-based zoning allows us to have a clear understanding expressed to the developers so that they can develop more quickly and more effectively and frankly cheaper in line with what the community's goals are. So that's the first innovation. The second innovation is something called the ground floor commercial incentive. The ground floor commercial incentive does 2 important things. We require 15% of our housing to be in inclusionary zoning, so affordable. That's in an area median income of 50%, and that would be deed restricted. What the commercial incentive does is it allows a developer to move those area median income levels up higher into workforce housing and middle income housing levels. So 70% of area median income, 80% of area median income, 100% of area median income. These are income levels. Again, they would be deed restricted. You'd have to be income qualified to get into these units. But these move us into firefighters and teachers and town employees and others that, frankly, are being blocked out of participating in our community because of the high cost of housing. The second thing that the ground floor commercial incentive does is it puts money into the build out of the first floor commercial units. So we're requiring, with your help, frankly, and thank you so much, that all parcels along Harvard Street, with a few exceptions, require ground floor commercial. We want ground floor commercial along our primary commercial corridor. And what the commercial incentive does is it gives credit to the developer to put money into building out that first floor commercial unit for the first tenant. Why is that important? It's very expensive to build out space on first floor commercial. And so by crediting money back to the developer, they're essentially helping to underwrite and lower the barrier to entry for mom and pops and non-national commercial tenants. It may be a tenant that's already there and they're going to take a pause and then go back into the space. But this is really important because we need to help make sure that not only are we building our commercial space along Harvard Street, but we're filling it. And so that's what the ground floor commercial incentive does. The third innovation, which really is important, a passion for me, is we're requiring that all housing that's developed on Harvard Street, all buildings, we have to have 15% in our inclusionary zoning. There is a provision in our current zoning bylaw that in inclusionary zoning that allows a developer for a unit that's 10 units or less, a building that's 10 units or less, they can write a check to the Housing Trust Fund to not build those units. They can defer them. They can buy the units out. And what that ends up doing is creating, and we've seen a number of these buildings throughout Brookline, 100% luxury buildings. There's no affordable units in it. And so the select board really wanted to adopt a policy and put forward as a trial, it's on Harvard Street only, where if you're going to build on Harvard Street, we're going to get 15% of the units will be affordable units. And that's really an important innovation. So those three innovations are things that we're going to try. We feel pretty confident that we're going to get a good outcome, and we'll be able to see as development happens, are we getting what we want, and how does this inform our comprehensive planning going forward for the rest of the town?
And I'll just climb on and add two more important things to consider for the ground floor commercial. The first is that if you want commercial that serves people who walk and people who take transit and people who ride the bike, it has to be contiguous. And so slotting sort of residential and commercial here and there makes it harder for people who aren't driving and parking right out front to actually visit multiple stores. But the other thing is the commercial tax rate is higher and the value of commercial property is higher. And those two things combined means that Brookline generates more, about twice as many dollars per square foot of commercial space as it does residential. And we just had a substantial debt exclusion for Pierce. We're in a land where Prop 2.5 is not covering the growing costs of running a municipality like ours. And so holding on to, or if possible, expanding that tax base gives the residential property taxpayers a little bit of a break. It's all in the margins, right? It's a little bit here and there,
right,
but it just might add up.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, bending the curve on residential taxes is really an important mechanism for us to help, on the margins, help to make Brookline a little bit more affordable for everybody, including, income burdened individuals like seniors.
Now, without getting into too many details, tell us what the Harvard Street map and the form-based zone says about parking.
So what it says about parking, that's a great question. So first, you should know that, our zoning on Harvard Street, including our current parking requirements, prevents anything from being developed on Harvard Street. There's a reason why you're not seeing any development. It's because our current zoning, including parking. So the proposal for Harvard Street is I'm going to say it's moderate in its approach to parking, cautious but not crazy, and but it's going to work. We require that a half a space be included for residential parking, and then depending on the commercial area, commercial building, we've taken those numbers down. But importantly, we have protected, and I'm going to use the word protect, a number of the commercial lots, actually all municipal lots along Harvard Street are excluded from the zoning change. So they're essentially cordoned off. So Brookline Village, there's a couple of lots up in JFK Crossing, those as well. And that's important because, we heard loud and clear from our commercial operators and owners along Harvard Street that they want to make sure that we continue to have opportunities for parking for employees and also for customers. And so I think that we're going to be able to ensure in the near term that's going to be the case. And as we see housing get developed and possibly additional commercial as well, we do expect additional commercial. I think that we'll be better informed as to what we need to be done going forward. There is a study that's underway around commercial parking, especially up in the Coolidge Corner area that will help inform that. So I feel really good that parking is we're going in the right direction with that, Tommy. And I think that there's a lot of support, frankly, for the solution that we're putting forward.
Should we expect any new driveways crossing the Harvard Street sidewalk as a result of development?
Nope. Actually, the form-based zoning, there are no additional curb cuts along Harvard Street. That was a critical design point for the corridor. You know, that curb cuts entering buildings creates all kinds of problems. First, it creates congestion, but it also is a great danger for pedestrians and cyclists and other folks that are just trying to move around in our commercial corridor.
Any final thoughts either for viewers at large or for town meeting members who are going to have to digest this in far more complexity and cast a few votes on it in the coming month?
Yeah, so I will be speaking to town meeting on this subject. I get to deliver the remarks for the select board. Town meeting is going to have two options, for compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. And, the select board's preference is this consensus article, which is both the M district as well as the Harvard Street corridor. We think it's the right thing to do. It's going to enable an estimated 1,100 potential housing units. It does address we think it helps address the rising costs of affordability in housing within Brookline. We feel confident that it's going to help strengthen our business district by adding new customers near the shops. The shops won't need customers. So if we can bring the customers into the neighborhood, that's a great thing. And importantly, it's going to help fight climate change. Having housing near transit reduces our dependency on automobiles. And we have a zero emissions goal that we need to achieve. And this is an important component of that. And then finally, a mix of housing price points, certainly in our deed restricted areas along Harvard Street, increases economic, social, and racial equity and diversity. And that's important. We want to make sure that we're not turning into a community of rich and poor, as we continue to see our moderately priced housing taken up for expensive condos and homes. So I feel really good about it. I'm proud of the select board and its work that they did over the summer and the fall. I have great respect for the two major housing organizations, Brookline by Design and Yes in Brookline, for their willingness to come and negotiate. Frankly, I don't think these organizations have ever talked across the table from each other. And they did something really important. And I think they did something that should be an example for Brookline going forward. In the past few years, we haven't really been working together as a community. There's been some division. And I think this sets the stage as an example of how, if we work together, we can find common solutions that benefit Brookline and it can be supported by many people. So I feel good about it, Tommy. I appreciate the invite. And it's certainly going to be an exciting, very interesting town meeting.
Well, I want to give a lot of credit to you, Select Board Member Warren, in giving credit to the folks who got to the negotiating table and had a conversation, and giving credit to the select board. I think it's important for folks to know that, in fact, it was you who made sure that those folks got to the table and kept them at the table and kept them talking and kept them listening. I believed that they would get there, and I believed that they would find a consensus. But in fact, folks, it was Paul Warren who was there to help make sure that happened. And being, in this case, a consensus builder, he has been humble about his role, but I don't have to be humble about his role. I get to talk about it. This doesn't get there without Paul Warren. And I was skeptical at first. And as I talk to more and more folks, it's become really clear to me that it is Select Board Member Paul Warren who has gotten this to where we are, from an idea for Harvard Street that plenty of folks were really uncomfortable with, to an idea for M zones and Harvard Street that together both comply with the MBTA Communities Act and do more than that, allow for the creation of more housing in a place that meets a whole bunch of needs. So hats off to you, sir. We will see what town meeting does with it. you know,
I have
it's,
great hope. I have great
it's
hope.
a hairy place, so we'll find out.
I have great hope it's that it's going to pass. It is a 2/3 vote, but I am just amazed at all the people that are getting behind this, all the boards and commissions. So I think it's going to happen, Tommy. I feel pretty good about it.
Well, make sure you ask for extra time from the moderator and make sure you stick to it. Folks, you've been watching TV on TV here on Brookline Interactive Group. Great interview with our select board member, Paul Warren. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tommy.